Hey y'all, last night I was lucky enough to be able to see Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness at an early press screening, and there's a lot to talk about. This review is going to be completely spoiler free, so don't feel like you need to click away, but in that, cameos are spoilers, so I will not be confirming or denying any of the cameos that you put in the comics. So don't ask me if such and such person or somebody's mom or character is in the movie. I'm not going to tell you. Cool? We on the same page about that? Great. So the first thing I have to do in this review is admit that this movie was a really wild ride. I felt like at a lot of times I was really at the edge of my seat and I was just fully entranced, which is I think definitely a good thing for a movie, and especially a Doctor Strange movie. If I was bored, it would mean that maybe they're not pulling out all the stops. I will start with the fact that I do need to eat my words. If you saw yesterday's video, it was my unpopular MCU opinions, and one of my biggest takes in that, or I felt like it was my biggest take, was that I thought Multiverse of Madness could be really messy and non-cogent and just really hard to understand, and like nothing was given its full due. I really do feel like I can eat my words on that and say like I was definitely wrong in terms of the actual like narrative information wasn't messy. I think it was structured really well for the most part. I think the pacing was really good. Again, I always hesitate to get into pacing because that's something that, you know, if you're not enjoying the movie, it's gonna feel like it's a poorly paced movie. I felt like I was really engaged with the film the whole time, and I felt like every piece of narrative information, without feeling too like chapter by chapter, it all felt really segmented to the point where I didn't feel like, oh hey, we didn't get to close that chapter over there, are we ever going to go back to it and then be disappointed by the end of the film that certain things weren't addressed. So obviously it's a mystery movie in a little bit of a way, not like a Knives Out. There are some elements there that you're not really sure exactly what's going to happen when, which definitely does keep you on the edge of the seat in that theater. However, I do feel like I was sort of right in terms of messiness, in terms of the overall tone of this movie. I hesitate to say this movie didn't know what it wanted to be because it's a Doctor Strange movie, so it's gonna be wacky and weird from the get-go. However, I feel like there's a really big issue in this film with tone. On one hand, you have some of the Sam Raimi horror elements that I was honestly pleasantly surprised to see in the film. I definitely jumped a few times. It was really cool to get that in a Marvel film. And similar to that, I think this film took a lot of really big risks with explaining the multiverse, having some abstract ideas in terms of deviating from comics or deviating from past Marvel movies. Like, I think it really was its own unique thing in that way. However, a lot of those are very serious, as well as the themes of this movie were ultimately, if you break them down, very kind of intense and adult is the wrong word, but at least complex. And then you have these moments of really stylized like 2000 superhero movie camp, which of course I reference that because again, it's Sam Raimi. He did the first couple of Spider-Man movies, so I feel like while you get his horror expertise and his like kind of stylized approach to violence or that sort of thing, but I do feel like there's these childlike moments of either dialogue or some of the ways in which certain elements of the story are played out that for me, they kind of made me cringe watching it. And it's not like it's a horrible thing. It just sort of, it either goes on for too long or it just feels like you're dealing with all of these really heavy, mature, complex things. And then you're gonna tie it up and finish all of that with these more simple, childlike explanations of things. And I didn't really appreciate that in the sense that it's going to be worse on rewatch in those moments for me. I just feel like those are things that like are not going to allow it to age well, and I could be wrong. It could make it better, and it does balance it a little bit more. And you know, you have the horror elements, but then it's like, okay, we really do have this like PG-13 element that you have to work with, and I get that. I just think that that tone shift can really hit you at times. Well, I think some of the humor is well placed in this film. That's not really what I'm talking about. You kind of have these like really intense shifts from kind of dark stuff to like just simple explanations of what's going on. I don't know. It could be your taste, but it was not mine. And it's not what I would have chosen to do with this movie because I do think it gives the film a little bit of sense of disjointedness, especially in terms of that tone. However, in all of that, a lot of risks were taken with this film, and I really commend the people that worked on it, although some of the directing and or editing choices that I will explain in my spoiler review I really didn't like, and I'm not looking forward to rewatching because they were just personal choices, okay? I just didn't like them. I do think a lot of risks were taken here, and just as much as there's those moments that I didn't necessarily care for, there's a lot of moments where I'm like, holy crap, they just did that. What a way to represent that or show that or adapt that. Bravo for the risks taken, for being daring enough with a property this large to, stylistically do what you wanted with it. As much as the things I didn't like are personal, they're also like only mediocre bad versus like bad, if that makes sense. So like pretty much for me, everything about this film was good to mediocre. And that's where I will give it a higher rating ultimately than just, oh, it was bad. Because I think the narrative and the structure and the characters were explored well. And it's only those more risk-taking things that kind of I'm not so sure about. And last but not least, I ultimately enjoyed the premise of the film. I think, like I said, there's a real heavy reliance on these lower concept, deeper, heavier thematic elements that I think honestly have been in play pretty much all of phase 4 thus far, and I really enjoyed that. Again, that's just where the tone imbalance kind of doesn't work in this film's favor, because it did have this upside potential to really dive deeper into those heavy thematic weights that phase 4 really wants to explore with each of the characters that have a feature or a show in that time frame. Ultimately, I enjoyed that premise. I'm not going to give away a lot of what it is, because I think some of it they've done a good job of burying the lead in terms of what Marvel has released thus far, and I don't want to spoil that. But if you really like magic and you really like that thematic weight of phase 4, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with this film. So overall, it was a good movie. Not a great movie, but a good movie. And when I file it into my catalog of MCU films, it's not making the top 10, but it's certainly not making the bottom 10. And I think that is something that's really cool when you acknowledge how many risks this film took and how much it had to accomplish, and the fact that it pretty much did all of that with only a few minor flaws that, again, could be personal choices of mine that I didn't like. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. So we're going to keep it short and sweet so I don't even run the risk of spoiling anything else. Please let me know in the comments down below your expectations, your theories, or your hype about this movie. Please try to keep the comments spoiler free. And like I said, do not ask me about cameos. I will not answer your comment. I may even delete it. Also, I would really appreciate if you liked and hit the subscribe button, because you guys helping out the channel ultimately leads to me being able to go see these films early and then making reviews early for you guys, which thank you from the bottom of my heart. It truly means the world. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have an absolutely amazing day, and I will see you all in my very next video.